Twitter is the go-to social media platform for journalists and politicians. But Twitter has a new CEO, and he wants to focus less on free speech. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Just so you know, YouTube is secretly unsubscribing people, and they're not telling you when new episodes come out. So be sure to check back every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday for new episodes. Twitter is entering a new era. It will no longer be the same dumpster fire. Now it's a dumpster fire with a new boss. Twitter's co-founder, Jack Dorsey, announced last week that he resigned from Twitter. This isn't the first time Dorsey stepped down from being Twitter's CEO. But unlike last time, he's not just taking a different role. Now it's time for Twitter to break away from its founding and its founders. Replacing him is Parag Agrawal, Twitter's Chief Technology Officer, or CTO. As CTO, Agrawal led the creation of machine learning software that automatically removes content that breaks Twitter's rules. So the new guy running Twitter created their AI censorship mechanism. I guess Twitter isn't going to be a dumpster fire anymore. It's going to be a Seriously, Agrawal has specifically said Twitter isn't about free speech. In a 2020 interview with the MIT Technology Review, he said Twitter's role is not to be bound by the First Amendment. It should focus less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed. How times have changed. For instance, 30 years ago, there weren't gigantic, unaccountable social media companies dominating public discourse. And that's kind of what Agrawal is talking about. Here's the full context of Agrawal's quote about the First Amendment and free speech that's enraging many people. One of the changes today that we see is speech is easy on the internet. Most people can speak. Where our role is particularly emphasized is who can be heard. See, they're not stopping you from speaking. They're just stopping other people from hearing what you have to say. Of course, Agrawal doesn't think Twitter dominating public discourse and deciding who can be heard is a bad thing. He thinks Twitter just needs to dominate public discourse in a better way. And so increasingly, our role is moving towards how we recommend content, how we make sure these recommendation systems that we're building, how we direct people's attention, is leading to a healthy public conversation that is most participatory. In some ways, this isn't a surprise. Twitter already has taken it upon itself to decide what is newsworthy. But Agrawal wants to go further with his goal of serving a healthy public conversation. What's a healthy conversation? Agrawal said Twitter researchers tried to boil it down to a few measurable metrics. Do people share a sense of reality? Do people have diverse perspectives and can be exposed to diverse perspectives? Is the conversation civil? Hold on. Has Twitter's new CEO actually spent time on Twitter? Because people on Twitter do not share a sense of reality. They only want to be exposed to diverse perspectives so they can dunk on them. And trying to find a civil conversation on Twitter is like trying to find the Holy Grail buried in the fountain of youth at the end of the rainbow. Clearly, the only solution is to burn Twitter to the ground. Actually, Twitter has already taken care of that itself. Now, usually when you talk about social media companies and free speech, the First Amendment, you'll always get someone saying, actually, private companies don't have to allow free speech. Which is technically true, but you might want to rethink that point of view. I'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. So are social media companies like Twitter a danger to free speech? Well, that's certainly something many conservatives have been talking about. Back in May 2020, then President Trump issued this executive order, warning we cannot allow a limited number of online platforms to handpick the speech that Americans may access and convey. A few months later, Trump was banned from most social media platforms. But don't worry, claims of anti-conservative bias by social media firms are baseless. There's no evidence of it. In fact, conservatives thrive on social media. But here's a twist for you. The idea that private actors, not just government officials, might threaten the freedom of speech guaranteed by the First Amendment was first suggested by big government liberals, whom contemporary conservatives love to hate. I'm talking progressive legal scholars like Felix Cohen and Robert Hale, or liberal Justice Thurgood Marshall. You see, all forms of American mass communication, TV, newspapers, movies, social media platforms, are owned by private companies. Their goal is to make money, not to protect private citizens' freedom of speech. And in many ways, that's bad news for us all. Remember when social media platforms were removing coronavirus conspiracy theories, like any posts claiming the coronavirus may have come from a Chinese lab? Then a year later, mainstream media decided maybe that theory should be taken more seriously. Because sometimes conspiracy theories turn out to be investigative journalism. This is a case where Twitter's attempt to promote healthy conversation can backfire. Here's what Twitter's new CEO, Parag Agrawal, said in 2020 about determining what misinformation is on Twitter. We focused way less on what's true and what's false. We focused way more on potential for harm as a result of certain content being amplified on the platform without appropriate context. How do they decide what appropriate context is? Credible sources. But when it comes to, for example, the coronavirus lab leak hypothesis, here's what the credible sources did. For over a year, the media enforced falsehoods about the pandemic's origins, never evaluated the evidence, never apologized, and was never held accountable. So leaning heavily on the credible sources for context can actually make everything worse when those credible sources are wrong. Although to Twitter's credit, when it comes to the coronavirus lab leak, they actually did better at this than Facebook. Low bar, I know. But because Twitter didn't outright censor discussions about the lab leak hypothesis, a group of amateur sleuths were able to use Twitter to share information and ultimately break the Wuhan lab story. But if Twitter decides to be more heavy-handed in their pursuit of a healthy conversation, this kind of thing may never happen again. But it's not just a risk that social media companies rely too much on possibly biased, credible sources. There's also the risk the government could just pressure social media companies to censor things that would be illegal for the government to censor itself. Like when the Biden administration was flagging problematic posts for Facebook. And when it comes to politics, everything gets more complicated. Like right before the 2020 election, when Twitter and Facebook blocked this New York Post story about shady business dealings of Joe Biden's son, Hunter. At the time, Twitter said it was because the story was based on hacked materials, even though it wasn't, which made people wonder whether it was being blocked for political reasons instead. Jack Dorsey later admitted blocking the story was a mistake, but could it happen again? Free speech is so important because many people deep down are petty tyrants who are willing to strip away the freedoms of people they disagree with. So maybe you're happy that the new Twitter CEO is focusing less on thinking about free speech. Well, guess what? He may actually be helping the far right. I'll tell you how after the break. Welcome back. Just one day after Jack Dorsey resigned as CEO, Twitter announced new changes to its policy. It updated its existing privacy information policy and expanded its scope to include private media. This means sharing images or videos of a person without that person's permission can be reported and then flagged or taken down. The update was intended to protect users from doxing. Doxing is the act of maliciously revealing someone's private information, like phone numbers and addresses, to the public. Well, it didn't take long for the far right to take advantage of Twitter's new rule. Many on the left reported that Twitter is already locking and suspending the accounts of extremism researchers under its new private media policy. Some got locked out for simply documenting a public Proud Boys rally, or retweeting a photo of the Proud Boys leader. According to anti-extremist advocates, this is a gift to members of hateful movements eager to keep their identities concealed. Some even fear Twitter's new policy is being used to protect white nationalists from public scrutiny. But this doesn't just help white nationalists. Twitter's new policy is helping people in power become more powerful. That's thanks to frustratingly vague language, which gives Twitter lots of room to do whatever it wants. For example, even though Twitter's new policy on privacy protection makes an exception for public figures, it doesn't clearly define what a public figure is. Even if you are a public figure, Twitter can still remove content if it is said to be used to harass, intimidate, or silence people. People on both the right and left are concerned about the kind of power social media companies have. Some say tech companies are destroying democracy and the free press, and that Facebook and Twitter cross a line far more dangerous than what they censor. While Twitter's new CEO gave some examples of how Twitter is looking at healthy public conversation, he also admitted they're still trying to figure out exactly how to define and measure that. But it's ultimately up to Twitter and other social media companies to decide what's healthy and what's harmful, which has a huge effect on society. So you see how saying, actually private companies don't have to allow free speech could lead us all down a road to hell that's paved with good intentions. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. And if you like this show, please know we could not do it without direct support from viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered and contribute $1 or more per episode to help us keep the show going. Click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.